My name is Madison Parker, and I am 28 years old. 4 weeks ago, my parents sold my grandmother's antique piano, the one she promised would be mine, and used every single dollar from the sale to buy my younger sister a brand new Mercedes. They got $95,000 for it. They told themselves it was a smart move. A practical move. A family investment. And the worst part is they thought my grandma would never find out. They thought she was too sick, too medicated, too far gone in hospice to even notice what was missing. They also thought I was too soft to say anything. They were wrong about both of us. Because when I finally told my grandma what they had done, she did not cry. She did not yell. She did not beg them to do the right thing. She simply reached for her phone, dialed one number, and said 7 words that turned my entire family upside down. Before I tell you what those 7 words were, and what happened next at my mom's 60th birthday party, let me take you back to the day this all started. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late fall. I had just finished my last piano lesson of the day at the Community Arts Center in Arlington, Virginia. I was wiping fingerprints off the keys, stacking sheet music, and thinking about what I was going to make for dinner when my phone rang. It was my dad. I almost didn't answer. Not because I didn't love him, but because every time he called, it felt like I was about to be assigned a task instead of having a conversation. I picked up anyway. "Madison," he said. No hi. No how are you. No warmth. Your grandmother had another heart event. My stomach dropped. Is she okay? I asked. She's stable, he said. But they're moving her to hospice. Hospice. That word landed in my chest like a brick. Family meeting at the hospital in an hour, he added. Be there. Then he hung up. That was it. No reassurance. No emotion. Just instructions. I threw my bag in my car and drove straight to the hospital. By the time I got there, my parents and my sister were already gathered in the waiting room like they owned the place. My dad, Charles Parker, stood with his arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the wall like he was negotiating with the universe. My mom, Karen, clutched her designer handbag so hard her knuckles were pale. And my sister, Haley, was sitting in a chair with her legs crossed, scrolling on her phone like she was waiting for brunch. Haley is 4 years younger than me. She has always been the favorite. Not in the way parents admit out loud. In the way they show you without realizing it. The way they celebrate her wins louder. The way they forgive her mistakes faster. The way they look at her like she is the future, and look at me like I am a responsibility. My dad looked up when I walked in. Good, you're here, he said. Not, I'm glad you made it. Not, how are you holding up? Just good, like I had arrived on time for a meeting. We need to divide responsibilities, he continued. My mom nodded like this was a business plan. Someone needs to visit your grandmother daily, my dad said. I already knew where this was going. Dad, I started. He held up a hand like he was stopping an employee from interrupting. Your mother and I have the store to run, he said. We can't be here every day. They owned a small but successful home design business. It was their pride, their identity, their excuse for everything. Haley is busy, my mom added quickly. Haley didn't even look up. Busy doing what? I asked, even though I already knew. Haley finally lifted her eyes, bored and annoyed. I'm in a delicate stage with Ryan's family, she said. Ryan Collins. Her boyfriend of 8 months. The son of my dad's most important business partner. The kind of family my parents had been obsessed with impressing since the first time Haley said his name at dinner. My dad turned to me. So Madison, he said, like he was handing me a clipboard. You'll handle the visits. Your schedule is flexible. Teachers don't exactly work overtime. I felt my face burn. I wanted to remind him I taught music to 37 kids a week. I wanted to remind him I ran after-school programs. I wanted to remind him that my time mattered too. But I swallowed it, because I have spent most of my life swallowing things. Of course, I said quietly. I want to be with her anyway. Perfect, my dad said, already turning away. Keep us updated if anything changes. As I walked down the hallway toward my grandma's room, I heard my mom's voice behind me, low and meant for Haley's ears. At least she's useful for something. I stopped for half a second. Not because I was shocked. Because I wasn't. I kept walking. Grandma's room smelled like lavender and old paper. It was the first thing I noticed. Even in a hospital, even surrounded by machines and antiseptic, she found a way to make the air feel like her. There was a small lavender sachet on the windowsill and a worn paperback on her tray table. When she saw me, her face softened. There you are, honey, she said. Her voice was thin, but her eyes were still sharp. I walked to her bed and took her hand. How are you feeling? I asked. Like I got hit by a truck, she said, then gave me a faint smile. But I've had worse days. That was my grandma. Evelyn Hart. 76 years old. Sharp as a blade. And dying of congestive heart failure. The doctors were careful with their words, but I heard the truth in the pauses. Weeks. Maybe a month. 2 if she got lucky. I visited every day after school. Sometimes I brought her soup from her favorite deli. Sometimes I brought her crossword puzzles. Sometimes I just sat and talked, because the truth is, she was the only person in my family who ever made me feel like I mattered without needing to earn it. We talked about music. About her years playing in concert halls up and down the East Coast. About my students who couldn't read notes yet but could feel rhythm in their bones. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the parking garage outside her window, she reached for my hand. Her grip was weaker than I remembered, but her eyes were fierce. Madison, she said, I need you to know something. Anything, Grandma. The piano, she said. She paused like she was letting the word settle into the air. My piano. The one from 1892. My chest tightened. I knew exactly which piano she meant. The Steinway. The antique grand piano that had been in her living room for as long as I could remember. The piano I learned my first scales on when I was 7. The piano that held every memory of my childhood that didn't hurt. It's yours, she said firmly. I blinked. Grandma, you don't have to. I want to, she said. I already told your parents. I told them last month, in front of everyone. That piano belongs to you. I remembered that dinner. My dad's jaw tightening. My mom's tight smile. Haley rolling her eyes like the whole thing was embarrassing. Grandma squeezed my hand. You're the only one who understands what it means, she said. Promise me you'll take care of it. I felt tears sting my eyes. I promise. She smiled then. Not a sweet smile. A knowing one. There are things more valuable than money, sweetheart, she said. And some people only learn that the hard way. 2 weeks later, everything changed. Grandma asked me to bring her old photos from her house. Pictures from her performing days. Images she wanted to see one last time. I still had a key, so after work on a rainy Thursday, I drove over to her place in Alexandria. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I stepped inside, shaking rain off my jacket, and walked through the entryway. Past the dining room. Past the hallway where family photos hung like proof of a life that used to be full. And then I reached the living room. The space where the Steinway had sat for 30 years. And it was gone. I froze. Where the piano should have been, there was nothing but an ugly rectangle pressed into the carpet. A ghost outline. Like someone had ripped the heart out of the room. I stood there, not breathing, staring at the empty space like my brain could force the— My dad opened the door holding a glass of scotch like he'd been expecting applause for something. He looked annoyed to see me. "The piano," I said. "What did you do?" He didn't even blink. "Sold it. Got 95 grand. Good price." The world tilted. "You sold it?" I said. "Grandma said it was mine." "Grandma is dying, Maddie," he said, taking a sip. "She doesn't need a piano. And neither do you." Behind him, I heard keys jingle. Haley appeared in the hallway, smiling like Christmas came early. "New keys for a new car," she said, swinging them like a trophy. I stared at her. "You bought her a car?" I asked. "With Grandma's piano?" My dad shrugged. "Mercedes. Haley needs to make the right impression on the Collins family. Ryan's parents are particular about appearances." I felt my throat tighten. "That piano was supposed to be mine," I said. My mom appeared behind my dad, arms crossed. "And what would you do with it?" she asked. "You teach kids after school, Maddie. You don't perform. You don't have the space." Haley needed that money for her future. Her future. The words tasted bitter. Haley stepped closer, smug. "Don't be jealous, Maddie," she said. "It's not a good look. Maybe if you picked a better career, you could afford nice things too." I looked at my parents. At my sister. At the life they had built where I was always the afterthought. Always the one expected to sacrifice quietly. "Does Grandma know?" I asked. Silence. "Does she know you sold her piano?" I asked again. My mom's face hardened. "She's in hospice, Madison. She's on morphine half the time. She doesn't need to know anything that might upset her." "You mean you don't want her to know?" I said. My mom stepped closer, her voice dropping low. "If you tell her, and it stresses her out, and something happens, that will be on you. Do you want to be responsible for killing your grandmother?" The accusation hung in the air like poison. And for a second, I almost backed down. Because that is what I have always done. But something inside me finally snapped. "Grandma has a right to know," I said quietly. "And I will not lie to her." Then I turned and walked out. I did not sleep that night. My apartment felt smaller than usual, like the walls were closing in, like even the air was judging me for not being enough. It was a modest one-bedroom in a quiet building near the edge of Arlington. Nothing fancy. Nothing Instagram-worthy. But it was mine. I paid for it myself, every month, on a music teacher's salary. My parents used to make little comments about it, like it was proof that I never aimed high enough. I sat on my second-hand couch, staring at a framed photo on my bookshelf. Grandma Evelyn at her last concert 20 years ago. She looked radiant in that picture. Confident. Alive. Her fingers hovering above the keys, her whole face lit up like she belonged to the world. And behind her, barely visible in the photo, was the Steinway. The piano they sold like it was nothing. My mom's words kept circling my head. "If something happens, that will be on you." Was she right? If I told Grandma the truth, would it hurt her? Would it make her final days heavier? Would it break her heart? But then I remembered something Grandma once told me when I was 12. I had failed a math test and I didn't want to tell my parents. I wanted to hide it. Pretend it didn't happen. Truth can hurt, she told me. But lies hurt deeper. They just take longer. I pulled my knees up to my chest and thought about the last 28 years. Every time I stayed quiet to keep the peace. Every time I let Haley take what she wanted because fighting felt pointless. Every time I swallowed my feelings so my family could stay comfortable. And where did it get me? Alone. Invisible. Watching them erase Grandma's wishes like her words meant nothing. If I stayed silent now, I was not keeping the peace. I was helping them get away with it. By 3 in the morning, I had made my decision. Grandma deserved the truth. She deserved to know that her son had stolen from her, lied to her, and assumed she was too weak to matter anymore. And maybe I deserved to stop apologizing for existing. I set my alarm for early morning. I would go to hospice before work. I would tell her everything. Grandma was awake when I arrived. She was propped up against her pillows, watching the sunrise through the window like she was trying to memorize it. "You look like you haven't slept," she said softly. "I haven't." I pulled a chair close to her bed and took her hand. "Grandma, I have to tell you something," I said. "And it's going to hurt." Her eyes stayed steady on mine. "Then tell me." So I did. I told her about the empty living room. I told her about the phone call with my mom. I told her about my dad saying he sold it, like he sold a used couch. I told her about the $95,000. I told her about the Mercedes. And I told her about my mom's threat. Every word felt like I was pushing glass out of my throat. I kept waiting for her to cry. For her breathing to change. For her heart monitor to start screaming. For the kind of devastation that could break what was left of her fragile heart. But Grandma Evelyn did not react the way I expected. She let out a long, slow breath. Not a gasp. Not a sob. Just a sigh. The sigh of someone who had been bracing for this for years. "Grandma," I whispered. She turned her head toward me, and her expression was not grief. It was calm. Almost resigned. "I knew this might happen, sweetheart," she said. I blinked. "You knew?" "I know my son," she replied. "I have watched him become this person for 40 years. I hoped he would change, but I also prepared for the possibility that he wouldn't." My stomach twisted. Prepared how? She did not answer right away. Instead, she reached toward her bedside table. "Hand me my phone," she said. I stared at her, confused, but I picked it up and placed it in her hand. She scrolled through her contacts with surprising precision. Her fingers were slower than they used to be, but still steady. Then she tapped a name and hit call. She put it on speaker. 3 rings. Then a man's voice came through, deep and measured. "Evelyn, how are you feeling?" "I'm dying, Harold," Grandma said. "But I'm clear-headed, and it's time." There was a pause. "I understand," he said. "When?" "Sunday," Grandma said. "Karen's birthday party. At my house." "I'll prepare the documents," the man said. "Thank you, old friend," Grandma replied. Then she ended the call and placed the phone back on the table like she had just ordered groceries. I sat there, stunned. "Grandma," I said slowly. "Who is Harold?" "Harold Jennings," she answered. "He's been my attorney for 30 years. He was your grandfather's closest friend." My brain felt like it was sliding sideways. "You have your own attorney?" "I have many things your father doesn't know about, Madison," she said. Her eyes flickered with something almost playful. "Charles assumes he understands everything about my affairs. He always has. That is his greatest weakness." I swallowed. "What is happening on Sunday at Mom's birthday party?" Grandma squeezed my hand. "Justice," she said. "Delayed, perhaps. But justice nonetheless." I stared at her. "I don't understand." "You don't need to understand everything yet," she replied. "I just need you to do one thing for me." "Anything." "Come to the party," she said. "Dress nicely. And bring your patients." I almost laughed, even though my chest still hurt. "My patients?" She gave me a ghost of a smile. "The kind of patience I taught you when you were learning Chopin and wanted to throw the sheet music across the room." I shook my head. Is it really that bad? Worse, she said. He was in his late 60s with silver hair, gold-rimmed glasses, and the calm posture of a man who had seen every kind of family disaster and survived them all. Madison Parker, he said, standing to shake my hand. Your grandmother speaks of you constantly. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Mr. Jennings, I started. Harold, please, he said. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. Sit. Your grandmother asked me to explain a few things before Sunday. I sat down, hands folded tightly in my lap. My fingers were trembling. Your grandmother is a remarkable woman, Harold said. She is also far more astute than her children give her credit for. She has been observing and planning. Planning what exactly? I asked. Harold folded his hands on the desk. Tell me, Madison, he said. Do you know who owns the house your parents live in? I blinked. They do, I said. Grandma gave it to them after Grandpa died. Harold's expression did not change. Is that what they told you? It's what everyone says, I replied. Everyone is wrong, Harold said. He pulled a folder from his desk drawer and slid it toward me. Open it. My heart pounded as I flipped it open. Inside was a copy of the property deed. And right there, in black and white, was the name listed as the owner. Evelyn Hart. Not my dad. Not my mom. Evelyn Hart. My throat went dry. They've been living in her house for 10 years, I whispered. Thinking it was theirs. Precisely, Harold said. But why would Grandma let them believe that? I asked. Because she was watching, Harold replied. Watching to see if her son would prove her fears wrong. Unfortunately, he did exactly what she expected. I sat back in the chair, dizzy. My dad had built his entire identity on that house. He hosted parties there. He invited business partners there. He bragged about it like it was proof he made it. But it was never his. It was borrowed. And now Grandma was calling it back. That night, I went home and started searching through a box Grandma had given me years ago. It was filled with old photos, concert programs, letters, pressed flowers from her garden. I had never gone through it carefully. It felt too personal, like reading someone's diary. But now I needed answers. Near the bottom, I found an envelope. Yellowed with age. Sealed. My name written across the front in Grandma's elegant script. Under my name were 6 words. For Madison, when you need to understand. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single photograph and a copy of a legal document. The header was partially obscured, but I could see Grandma's signature at the bottom. It was dated 5 years ago. And clipped to the corner was a note in her handwriting. The house never left my hands, sweetheart. It was only borrowed. And some borrowers do not deserve the privilege. I read it once. Twice. 3 times. Then I finally understood. Sunday's party was being held at Grandma's house. The same house my parents treated like their personal kingdom. The same house where they hosted holiday dinners. The same house where they sold the piano like it belonged to them. But it never belonged to them. It never did. My dad had built his status on a foundation that was not real. And Grandma had been waiting for the moment to expose it. Sunday was 3 days away. And whatever Grandma had planned, it was going to happen in the place my parents claimed as their territory. They had no idea what was coming. The night before the party, Grandma called me. Her voice was weaker than before. Each word sounded like it took effort. But her mind was still sharp. Madison, she said. Are you ready for tomorrow? I think so, I replied. I hesitated. Grandma, are you sure about this? It's Mom's birthday. In front of everyone. That is exactly why it needs to be tomorrow, she said. Your father sold my piano in front of everyone. He announced it at that family dinner last month like it was his decision to make. He did not ask me. He did not think about you. He assumed I was too weak and you were too quiet to matter. I closed my eyes. I remember. Then you understand why the lesson needs witnesses, she said. Her voice softened. I am not doing this for revenge, sweetheart. Revenge is empty. I am doing this because it is right. And because you deserve to be protected, especially after I am gone. Tears burned behind my eyes. Grandma, I said, I should have acted sooner. I watched how they treated you for years, and I kept hoping Dad would change. Love makes us blind sometimes, she replied. But I can still make it right. I do not have much time left, Madison. I can feel it. So I need to know. Do you trust me? Always, I whispered. Then come tomorrow, she said. Wear something that makes you feel strong. And no matter what happens, remember this. You are not the villain in this story. You never were. We said goodnight. I held my phone against my chest long after the call ended. Tomorrow would change everything. I just had to be ready to let it. Sunday arrived with pale winter sunlight and that crisp kind of air that makes everything feel sharper than usual. The kind of day where even your thoughts feel louder. Grandma's house, the house my parents had treated like their own for a decade, looked almost festive from the outside. A bright happy 60th birthday banner was stretched across the front porch. Cars lined the driveway and spilled down the street like it was some big neighborhood event. I parked at the far end, turned off my engine, and sat there with my hands on the steering wheel. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I had chosen a navy blue dress. Simple, fitted, nothing flashy, but it made me feel steady. Like I could stand tall without needing permission. I wore pearl earrings Grandma had given me for my 21st birthday. I pinned my hair back neatly. It felt like armor. I took one deep breath and walked up to the house. The moment I opened the front door, the noise hit me. Laughter. Chatter. Glasses clinking. Music playing softly from a speaker in the corner. It smelled like catered food and perfume and expensive candles. There were about 30 guests inside. Aunts and uncles I only saw at holidays. Neighbors from the old days. A handful of my dad's business associates, the ones who always shook my hand like they were doing me a favor. My eyes scanned the room automatically. I spotted Ryan Collins near the fireplace, tall and polished, looking like he belonged in a business magazine. His father, James Collins, stood beside him, sipping a drink and smiling like he was evaluating everything. Haley was attached to Ryan's arm like a bracelet, her hair perfectly curled, her makeup flawless, her dress screaming money. She looked like she was auditioning to be someone else. My mom stood near the dining table in a tight red designer dress, accepting compliments like a queen receiving tribute. She laughed too loudly. She touched people's arms when she talked. She looked like she wanted everyone to believe she had a perfect life. My dad moved through the room with practiced charm, shaking hands, telling stories, acting like the host. Acting like he owned the place. And then my eyes landed on the living room corner. The corner where the Steinway had sat for 30 years. It was empty. Someone had placed a big potted plant there, like a leafy green apology. It looked ridiculous. Like trying to cover a missing tooth with lipstick. My stomach twisted. I felt a hand touch my shoulder. Madison, sweetheart. I turned and saw Aunt Linda, Grandma's younger sister. Her hair was silver now, her face lined with years, but her eyes were kind. How is Evelyn really? She asked quietly. Tired, I said honestly. But still sharp. Aunt Linda nodded. She always was the smart one. Her gaze drifted to the empty corner. I noticed the piano's gone, she said. Charles told me Evelyn wanted to sell it. I swallowed. My throat tightened, but I forced my face to stay. He gestured toward Ryan, who gave a polite smile. James Collins nodded, pleased. And to celebrate her bright future, my dad continued, we have a special surprise. Haley squealed like she already knew. My dad waved everyone toward the front door. Come on out, he said. You're going to love this. The crowd flowed outside like a tide. I followed, numb, my heels clicking on the hardwood floors. The front porch was crowded with guests, bundled in coats, smiling, whispering. Then I saw it. In the driveway sat a gleaming silver Mercedes, spotless, perfect, with a bright red bow perched on the hood. It looked like a commercial. Haley screamed and ran down the steps like she was 16 again. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, she kept saying. She threw her arms around my dad. My mom laughed, delighted. Cameras came out. Phones were raised. Photos snapped. My dad turned to the crowd, proud as a king. A gift, he announced, made possible by Grandma Evelyn's generosity. My blood turned cold. He did not just buy the car. He was rewriting the story. He was turning Grandma into a sponsor for his favorite child. He sold her piano, and now he was using her name like a stamp of approval. He raised his glass again. Evelyn sold her antique piano to invest in her granddaughter's future, my dad said. A few people clapped again. Others looked uncertain. I stood frozen on the porch. I could hear my own breathing. My hands were shaking. I felt the sting of tears behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Haley posed beside the Mercedes, leaning against it like she belonged to it. Ryan stood next to her, arm around her waist, smiling for photos. James Collins watched, approving. And then, as if she could sense me, Haley turned her head. Her eyes found mine. Her smile sharpened. Madison, she called out, voice dripping with fake sweetness. Come take a picture. Don't be jealous. I'm sure Grandma will leave you something too. Maybe her old sheet music collection. A few people laughed. Not loudly. But enough. Enough to make my face burn. Enough to remind me exactly where I stood in this family. I stared at her. I did not move. And then I heard Aunt Linda beside me. Her voice was calm, but her hands were trembling. Charles, she said. My dad turned, smile still plastered on his face. Linda, can it wait? He asked. We're in the middle of something. Did you ask Evelyn before you sold that piano? Aunt Linda asked. The question landed like a rock dropped into still water. The porch went quiet. A couple people shifted uncomfortably. Someone lowered their phone. My dad's smile did not waver, but I saw something flash behind his eyes. Mother is in hospice, he said smoothly. She is not in a condition to make decisions like this. We did what was best for her. I spoke with her this morning. Aunt Linda's voice grew stronger. She is clear-headed, Charles. Completely lucid. And she told me you never asked her permission. You never even told her. More people were listening now. James Collins frowned. Ryan looked confused. My mom stepped forward, her face flushing. Linda, she said sharply. This is my birthday. Let's not make a scene. A scene? Aunt Linda let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. Karen, your husband sold Evelyn's most precious possession without her knowledge and used the money for a car. If anyone is making a scene, it is not me. The air felt tight. Like the whole porch was holding its breath. My dad's voice hardened. This is a family matter, he snapped. It does not need to be discussed in public. Actually, a new voice said from behind us. I think public is exactly where it needs to be discussed. I turned. My heart jumped. A man in a dark suit stepped onto the porch with calm authority. Harold Jennings. He carried a leather briefcase in one hand. His expression was polite, but his eyes were sharp. He walked past the crowd like he belonged there. "Good afternoon, everyone," he said. "My name is Harold Jennings. I am Evelyn Hart's attorney." The silence that followed was suffocating. My dad's face went pale. My mom blinked like she didn't understand what she was hearing. Haley's smile faded. James Collins straightened, suddenly alert. Harold stepped down into the living room area near the doorway, and the crowd followed him back inside like they were being pulled by gravity. People moved slowly now, whispers starting. "What is happening? Who is that? Evelyn has an attorney." I stepped inside too, my pulse racing. Harold positioned himself near the empty corner where the piano used to stand. It felt deliberate. Like he wanted everyone to look at that empty space and feel the absence. "I apologize for interrupting the celebration," Harold said, voice calm and clear. "But Evelyn Hart has asked me to address some urgent matters regarding her estate." My mom tried to speak. "Evelyn is very ill," she said quickly. "She is not in her right mind." Harold lifted one hand gently. "I visited Evelyn this morning," he said. "Her nurse can confirm she is fully competent and lucid. She dictated specific instructions for today." My dad finally found his voice, but it came out strained. "My mother has an attorney," he said. "Since when does my mother have her own?" "Since 30 years ago, Charles," Harold replied. His tone was polite, but it cut deep. "I also represented your father. You would know that if you ever bothered to ask." Muffled gasps rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." My mom's face tightened. Harold opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Now, I understand there has been confusion about property ownership," he said. "So let me clarify something." He removed a document and held it up. "This is the deed to the house we are currently standing in." I watched my dad's face drain of color like someone pulled the plug. "Notice the name on the deed," Harold continued. "Evelyn Hart. Not Charles Parker. Not Karen Parker. Evelyn Hart." The room erupted into whispers. "No way. That can't be right. They've lived here forever." My dad grabbed the back of a chair like he needed it to stay upright. Haley stared at Harold like her brain was glitching. And Harold was not done. "This house has never been transferred," he said. "It was never gifted. Your parents have been living here rent-free for 10 years at Evelyn's generosity. Nothing more." My mom's mouth fell open. "That is not true," she said. "We have lived here for a decade. We invested in this house." "Invested without authorization," Harold replied calmly. "Any improvements made without written consent belong to the property owner." Evelyn Hart. I saw James Collins take a small step back from my dad. Not dramatic. Just enough to create distance. Ryan's eyes flicked toward Haley, then away. Like he was seeing her differently now. Like he was seeing the risk. "Legally," Harold continued, "your parents are tenants at will. And the property owner has the right to terminate that arrangement at any time." My dad's voice cracked. "This is impossible. Mother promised the house was ours." "She promised you could live here," Harold corrected. "There is a significant legal difference." The room was dead quiet. Every eye was on my parents. My mom looked like she might faint. Haley whispered, "Dad?" My dad could not answer. He was staring at the deed like it was a death sentence. Harold placed the document on the dining table where everyone could see it. Then he looked up, steady and calm. "That," he said quietly, "is just the beginning." And in that moment, I realized Grandma wasn't just hurt. She wasn't just angry. She had been preparing. For years. And now, in front of everyone my parents cared about impressing, the truth was finally taking the stage. If you could have, this trust was created specifically to protect her most valuable assets in the event of financial misconduct. Financial misconduct? My mom sputtered. We are her family. Family members can still commit misconduct, Mrs. Parker, Harold said. As recent events have demonstrated. The words were polite. But they hit like a slap. My dad's jaw clenched. Haley's eyes darted around the room, looking for someone to laugh, someone to say this was a prank. No one did. Harold withdrew a thick stack of papers. Per the terms of this trust, he continued, the following assets are irrevocably assigned to a single beneficiary. He paused, then listed them slowly. The property we are standing in. Evelyn's financial accounts. And all items of sentimental value, including the 1892 Steinway piano that was recently sold without authorization. My heart pounded so hard it made my ears ring. Harold lifted his eyes from the papers. His gaze settled directly on me. The sole beneficiary of the trust is Madison Parker. For a second, I thought I misheard him. I blinked. My mouth went dry. The room went so silent it felt unreal. Then Haley's voice cracked through it like a scream. What? She shrieked. That is fraud. My dad's face twisted with rage. This is insane, he snapped. She was manipulated. That little. He pointed at me like I was a criminal. Like I had robbed them. Like I had done this. Harold's voice turned sharp. Mr. Parker, I would advise you to choose your next words carefully. Everything said here today is being witnessed by over 30 people. I saw my Aunt Linda move closer to me. Her hand found mine. She squeezed hard. And Harold kept going. Evelyn knew exactly what she was doing, he said. She spent 5 years watching and waiting. Hoping her son would prove her wrong. Instead, he sold her most treasured possession to buy a car for the granddaughter who rarely visits her. Haley flinched like she had been slapped. Ryan shifted away from her slightly. Not enough to make a scene. Just enough to make the message clear. Harold glanced down at his papers again. Regarding the sale of the Steinway piano, he continued, since the piano was part of the trust and Madison Parker is the designated beneficiary, the sale conducted without the trustees' consent constitutes unauthorized disposal of trust assets. Haley's voice came out small. What does that mean? It means, Harold said, the $95,000 must be returned to the trust within 30 days. My mom let out a sound that was half gasp, half laugh. 30 days. She repeated. That is impossible. The money is gone. It went to the car. Harold nodded once. Then I suggest you liquidate that asset, he said, glancing toward the front window where the Mercedes was still visible in the driveway. The dealer may accept a return. Though you will likely take a loss. Haley's eyes went wide. No, she whispered. No, no, no. My car. You are taking my car. Harold's tone stayed even. I am not taking anything, Miss Parker. I am simply explaining the legal consequences of choices that have already been made. Haley burst into tears. She turned toward Ryan, reaching for him like a lifeline. Ryan did not move. His face was carefully neutral. His eyes flicked toward his father, James Collins. James was whispering something to him. And whatever it was, Ryan's shoulders stiffened. Haley looked at him, desperate. Ryan, please. But he did not touch her. He did not comfort her. He just stood there, watching the room like he wanted to disappear. My dad's voice rose. This is ridiculous, he barked. We do not have $95,000 just sitting around. Harold did not blink. Then you will need to find a way, he replied. Failure to comply will result in civil litigation for misappropriation of trust property. Given the clear paper trail, I assure you the outcome will not be favorable. My dad let out a hollow laugh. You cannot do this, he said. Harold tilted his head slightly. Actually, I can. And so can the courts. The room felt like it was tilting. People were whispering now, openly. Some looked shocked. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked almost satisfied, like they had suspected something for years and were finally seeing it confirmed. I saw one of my dad's business friends exchange a look with another. I saw a neighbor press her lips together like she was thinking, I knew it. My mom was crying now. Not quietly. Not gracefully. Her mascara was streaking down her cheeks, and she kept shaking her head like she could shake reality away. This is my birthday, she whispered. This is my birthday. Harold looked at her, and for a second his expression softened. I understand this is painful, Mrs. Parker, he said. But Evelyn specifically requested this meeting occur today. In front of witnesses. Your husband and daughter publicly presented the sale of her piano as an act of generosity. So she is correcting the record. My mom's mouth opened. Then closed. Because she had no defense. Harold pulled out another document. Additionally, he said, Evelyn has instructed that your living arrangement in this house will be formally restructured. My dad snapped his head up. What does that mean? It means you may continue to reside here temporarily, Harold explained. But a proper lease agreement will be required. My mom's voice was barely audible. A lease? In the house we have lived in for 10 years. In the house, Harold corrected gently, that you never owned. My dad looked like someone had punched him. Haley was sobbing, hands over her mouth. And then, the final blow. Harold looked around the room, making sure everyone was listening. He spoke slowly. It is also important to note that representing someone else's property as your own, particularly in business contexts, can carry serious legal consequences. My dad's eyes widened. James Collins' expression shifted. Not confusion anymore. Now it was cold calculation. I watched him take another step away from my dad. Just a small one. But it was enough. Because in my dad's world, image was everything. And now, in front of the people he cared about most, his image was cracking. My dad's voice turned sharp, desperate. This is a misunderstanding, he said quickly. Mother promised me this house. Harold's voice stayed calm. Evelyn promised you the privilege of living here, he replied. Not ownership. And she is now revoking that privilege unless proper legal terms are met. The room was frozen. Every eye turned toward me again. Like I was holding the remote control to their downfall. My dad turned slowly, face twisted with fury. You did this, he hissed. You poisoned her against us. I felt something inside me go still. No, Dad, I said. I did not do anything. Grandma made these decisions 5 years ago. Before I knew about them. I only found out this week. My mom's voice shook with venom. You have always been jealous of Haley, she said. Of our family's success. This is your revenge. Revenge. The word made something cold settle in my chest. I took a step forward. I looked directly at her. I did not sell Grandma's piano without asking her, I said. I did not spend the money on a car for myself. I did not lie to everyone about what happened. My voice was steady now. Steadier than I thought it could be. I am not the one who said at least she is useful for something when I agreed to visit Grandma every day. I am not the one who hung up on me when I asked questions. And I am not the one who threatened me, saying I would be responsible for killing Grandma if I told her the truth. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone actually covered their mouth. My mom froze. My dad's eyes flicked away. Haley stopped crying for half a second, staring at me like she had never seen me before. I took another breath. I spent 28 years being invisible in this family, I said. Because for the first time in his life, he had an audience he could not charm his way out of. People were already stepping back. Already distancing themselves. Already deciding who they wanted to be associated with. James Collins cleared his throat. "Charles," he said, voice tight. "We will talk later." My dad opened his mouth, but James turned away. Ryan hesitated, then slowly removed Haley's hand from his arm. Haley stared at him. "Ryan?" she whispered. He did not answer. He just followed his father toward the door. My sister looked like someone had ripped the floor out from under her. And I stood there, in the center of it all, feeling terrified and strangely calm at the same time. Because the truth was finally out. And there was no putting it back. After that, everything moved in slow motion. The party didn't end with a dramatic scream or a door slam. It ended the way most real disasters end. With people awkwardly gathering their coats. With quiet whispers. With forced smiles that didn't reach anyone's eyes. With the sound of a celebration collapsing under the weight of truth. Guests started leaving in small groups, pretending they had somewhere else to be. A neighbor mumbled something about an early morning. One of my dad's business associates shook Harold's hand like he was impressed, then avoided looking at my parents. Someone hugged my mom and said, "I'm sure it'll all work out," in that tone people use when they know it won't. The birthday cake sat untouched on the dining table. Perfect frosting. Perfect candles. A perfect little symbol of how my mom wanted her life to look. The banner on the porch drooped in the cold air like it had given up. Haley disappeared outside. I could see her through the window, standing near the Mercedes, crying like the car was a person who had betrayed her. My dad sank into a chair in the living room, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. My mom stood frozen by the window, mascara streaked, hands clenched. She looked like she was trying to stay upright out of pure spite. Harold stepped closer to me, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "Madison," he said gently. "We need to discuss next steps." I nodded, still feeling like I was floating outside my own body. "Okay." "Legally," Harold said, "you have several options. You could demand immediate eviction. Given the circumstances, your grandmother would support whatever you decide." I looked across the room at my parents. At the two people who had made me feel like I was never enough. At the two people who stole from my grandmother while she was dying. At the two people who threatened me into silence. They looked broken. Not because they felt sorry. Because they got caught. A small wounded part of me wanted to punish them. To make them feel every ounce of what I had felt for years. But I knew something in my chest would rot if I did that. I took a slow breath. "I don't want to throw them out," I said. "Not immediately." Harold's eyebrow lifted. "Are you certain?" "Yes," I replied. "Here is what I want. The $95,000 gets returned within 90 days, not 30. I will give them time to sell the car and figure it out. They can stay in the house with a formal lease agreement at minimal rent. And after Grandma." My throat tightened. "After she passes, they will have 12 months to find somewhere else to live." Harold studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "That is remarkably generous," he said. "Given everything." "Maybe," I said. "But I am not doing this to punish them. I am doing it because it is right. And because I refuse to become the kind of person they are." Harold's expression softened. "Your grandmother said you would respond this way," he said. "She is very proud of you." My voice cracked. "I know. I know she is." The lease agreement and repayment terms were drafted right there on the dining room table. Harold moved quickly, like this was routine. My Aunt Linda stayed as a witness. 2 remaining guests, distant relatives who hadn't left yet, signed as witnesses too. My dad signed without looking at me. His hand shook slightly, but he forced the pen across the page like it was a punishment. My mom's hand trembled so badly she could barely hold the pen. Neither of them said a word. Not a sorry. Not a question. Not even anger anymore. Just silence. By the time the last signature was in place, the house was empty. James Collins and Ryan were long gone. The business associates had vanished. The neighbors were gone. The birthday party was over. And all that was left was the wreckage. Aunt Linda hugged me before she left. "You did the right thing, sweetheart," she whispered. "Evelyn would be so proud." "She is proud," I said softly. "I talked to her this morning." As if the universe was listening, my phone buzzed. A video call request from Grandma's hospice number. My chest tightened. I answered immediately. I walked to the empty corner of the living room where the piano used to be. Grandma's face appeared on my screen. Pale. Tired. But peaceful. Nurse Carla stood behind her, smiling gently. "My brave girl," Grandma whispered. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," I admitted. "And relieved. And sad. All at once." Grandma's eyes glistened. "That is how courage feels, sweetheart," she said. "It is never comfortable." "I didn't throw them out," I said. "I gave them time." "I know," she whispered. "Harold texted me." Her voice trembled, but her eyes stayed steady. "You are a better person than they deserve, Madison. But that is why I chose you." I pressed my hand to the screen like I could touch her through it. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered. "For everything. For protecting me." "Don't thank me," she said. "Just live well. Play music. Be happy. That is how you thank me." "I will," I promised. "I know you will," she whispered. "I know you will." The call ended. I stood there for a long time staring at the blank screen. Then I slowly turned and looked around the living room. The place where I grew up. The place that had always felt like my parents' territory. And for the first time, it felt like it might become mine. The first week after the party was chaos. News travels fast in small social circles, especially in places where people pretend they do not gossip. The story of what happened at Karen Parker's 60th birthday spread like wildfire. My dad's business partners suddenly became unavailable. Meetings got cancelled. Calls went unanswered. People who used to laugh at his jokes started acting like they had never met him. James Collins formally withdrew from the joint venture he and my dad had been planning. It was a deal worth over $200,000. Gone in an instant. When my dad demanded an explanation, James's response was cold. "I cannot do business with someone I cannot trust. If you would deceive your own mother, what would you do to a partner?" Haley had to return the Mercedes. The dealership offered her $80,000. $15,000 less than what my parents paid. Haley screamed at the salesman for 20 minutes. Then she signed the paperwork with tears dripping onto the contract. 3 days later, Ryan broke up with her through a text message. "My family thinks it is best if we take some time apart." That was all it said. Translation was simple. They wanted nothing to do with the Parker family drama. My sister, who had always been the golden child, suddenly found herself ordinary. No car. No rich boyfriend. No special status. She had to borrow my mom's old Honda to go to job interviews. I did not gloat. I did not reach out. I just went back to my routine. Teaching piano. Helping kids find music inside themselves. Visiting Grandma every evening. But I would be lying if I said there was not some quiet satisfaction in watching the facade crumble. My dad spent years measuring success in appearances. The house. The car. The right connections. Now he was learning none of it had ever been real. The foundation he built his identity on was borrowed. And borrowed things. I watched how they treated you year after year. I kept hoping Charles would change. That Karen would see your value. I made excuses because I did not want to believe my own son could be. Her voice faded. It is not your fault, I said fiercely, tears falling now. Maybe not entirely, she whispered. But I could have done more. I could have protected you earlier instead of waiting until I was dying. She squeezed my hand weakly. I am sorry, sweetheart. You deserved better. You gave me everything that mattered, I said. Music. Love. The knowledge that I was worth something. That is more than they ever gave me. Grandma smiled. For a moment, she looked like the woman I remembered. Strong. Radiant. Full of life. I am so proud of you, Madison, she whispered. You have a good heart. But you finally learned to guard it. You taught me that, I said. Then I did something right, she whispered. Her eyes fluttered closed. I am tired now, sweetheart. Stay with me. Always, I whispered. I stayed. I held her hand. I talked to her softly about nothing and everything. About my students. About the garden in her backyard. About the music she loved. Grandma Evelyn passed away that evening. Peacefully. With my hand in hers. And even though I knew it was coming, it still felt like the world cracked open. Because she was the only person who ever saw me clearly. And now she was gone. The funeral was held 5 days later at the small church Grandma had attended for most of her life. It was the kind of place that still smelled like old wood and hymn books. Warm, familiar, quiet. Just like her. Grandma's wishes were simple. No extravagant flowers. No dramatic displays. No performance. Just music, memories, and the people who actually loved her. I played piano during the service. Not the Steinway, because that was gone. But a modest upright piano the church had owned for decades. The keys were worn, the sound slightly uneven, but it was enough. I played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the first piece Grandma ever taught me. My hands shook at first. But once the music started, something in me steadied. The notes filled the church like a soft goodbye. The church was half full. Aunt Linda sat in the front row, tissues clutched in her hand. Grandma's friends from her performing days filled several pews. Older women with white hair and elegant coats. People who remembered when Evelyn Hart had been a name that meant something. My parents sat in the back. They did not approach me before the service. They did not speak to me during. They did not look at me after. My mom wore dark sunglasses that hid her eyes. My dad stared straight ahead like he was attending his own sentencing. Haley was not there. Too emotionally fragile, my mom told someone who asked. I delivered the eulogy. My voice trembled, but I did it anyway. I spoke about Grandma's music. Her wisdom. Her quiet strength. I spoke about how she taught me love was not about grand gestures. It was about showing up. Day after day. Choosing to see someone for who they really are. I did not mention the drama. The funeral was not the place for it. After the service, my dad started walking toward me. I saw him hesitate. Take a step. Then stop when my mom grabbed his arm and pulled him away. He never made it across the room. Maybe he wanted to apologize. Maybe he wanted to blame me. Maybe he wanted to say something he could never actually say out loud. I will never know. But I had already made peace with the truth. Some apologies never come. And some are not needed anymore. 6 months later, I moved into Grandma's house. It felt strange at first. walking through rooms filled with her presence. Hearing the creak of floorboards she had walked on for decades. Sleeping in the guest bedroom I remembered from childhood. But slowly, it began to feel like home. Not just her home. Mine. The $95,000 was returned, piece by piece. My parents sold what they could. They took out a loan. They scrambled. They did it because they had no choice. And because for the first time, the law was watching them instead of just me. I used part of the money to buy a new piano. Not a Steinway. Those cost far more than $95,000. But I found a beautiful Yamaha Grand that felt warm and rich and alive. I placed it in a corner where Grandma's piano used to be. Different. But meaningful. A new beginning instead of a replacement. On weekends, I started teaching private lessons out of the house. The first student was Aunt Linda's granddaughter, Sophie. 8 years old. Bright-eyed. Restless. Impatient. Just like I had been. When she played her first complete scale without stopping, I cried. Sophie looked at me like I was crazy. "Why are you crying?" she asked. "Because you just did something hard," I told her. "And you didn't quit." Grandma would have loved her. My parents moved out 2 months after Grandma's death. They did not wait the full 12 months I offered. They said they could not live somewhere with so many painful memories. But I think the truth was simpler. They could not stand the reminder of what they lost. They bought a small condo across town. My dad's business shrank to half its former size. The people who once chased his approval stopped answering his calls. My mom joined a different social club. One where people did not know the full story. We did not speak. Not because I was burning with anger. But because distance felt healthier than pretending. Some gaps are too wide to bridge. And I was done twisting myself into knots to make them comfortable. I wasn't bitter. Bitterness is exhausting. And I had a life to build. In the evenings, I sat at my piano and played until the stars came out. Sometimes Chopin. Sometimes Bach. Sometimes songs I made up on the spot that went nowhere and everywhere. And in those moments, Grandma felt close. In the smell of lavender from the garden she planted. In the way the light hit the windows at sunset. In the quiet peace of being alone without feeling lonely. She was gone. But she was everywhere. And I was finally free. 8 months after the funeral, my phone rang. Haley. I stared at her name on the screen for 3 rings before I answered. "Madison," she said. Her voice sounded different. Smaller. Less certain. "Haley." Silence stretched between us. 28 years of sisterhood reduced to awkward breathing. "I'm not calling to ask for anything," she said finally. "I just wanted to say something." "Okay," I replied. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened," she said. "About how I acted. I was so angry at first. At you. At Grandma. At everyone. I thought you stole something from me." She took a shaky breath. "And now I'm working at a marketing firm. Entry level. I ride the bus because I can't afford a car. And I started going to therapy. I didn't respond right away. I just listened. My therapist says I have a lot to unpack," she continued. "About Mom and Dad. About how I was raised. About why I thought I deserved everything without earning it." She let out a small laugh, hollow and tired. "Turns out being the favorite isn't actually a gift. It's a trap." I swallowed. "I'm glad you're working through it," I said quietly. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said. "I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know I understand now. Why you did what you did. Why Grandma did what she did. Grandma loved you too, Haley," I said. "She just couldn't reward behavior that hurt other people." I know, she whispered. I know that now. We sat in silence. Then I spoke carefully. If you ever want to talk, I said, I'm willing to listen. But I don't need them anymore either. And that is a kind of freedom I never expected to find. The final notes fade into the evening air. I look at Grandma's photograph on the piano. Her at 60, radiant, fingers poised above the Steinway. I will never have the original piano. I will never have the family I thought I had. But I have something better. I have myself. I have boundaries. I have a life built on truth instead of silence. And that is the real inheritance Grandma left me. And that is my story.